I am mildly perturbed, peeved, I say. I'm put off, I'm irritated, miffed, irked, riled, vexed, and overall discombobulated. And I'm just shocked. Doesn't it bother you when the video game industry creates an entire genre that's just named after another single video game's legacy? Excuse me, but what? Hollow Knight. What genre would you call it? It's a Metroidvania at heart, but it's also a Souls-like. See that? Right there! You couldn't use actual genres to describe the game on its own merits, but instead had it define it based on similarities it has with other games. But it's a lot like Metroid, and Castlevania, and Dark Souls. What's wrong with that? But Hollow Knight is so much more than that! I hate how those uninspired genres just limit games and force us to only view them in the shadows of what came before. Whatever happened to action adventures, or 3D platformers, or first-person shooters? Real genres define the gameplay and don't limit our understanding by forcing us to establish game-to-game unnecessary relationships. What the heck are you playing? Oh, this? This is God Eater. It's a Monster Hunter-like. Oh my god, you're part of the problem! Okay, let me see what this game's all about. I swear I'm not finishing this video until I create a proper genre title for it. Good luck with that. It's got a lot in common with Monster Hunter, and it's just easier talking about it in direct comparison. Even so, maybe all that means is that derivative games like Monster Hunter are genre defining and we should create terms to reference that. Did you know that in Japan, the genre Metroidvania is written out as search action? That makes so much more sense now that I think about it. So what would you call God Eater? Well, it's clearly inspired by Monster Hunter, but I'm finding a lot of interesting quirks that make it stand out from the expected formula. Better than saying it's just a Monster Hunter ripoff. Don't be silly. That's Dauntless. The meat of the gameplay is in taking on missions to slay wild origami, an invasive alien species that have all but completely wiped out all life on the planet. The origami come in a vast variety of shapes and sizes, some looking fantastical and others mechanical. They're all completely made up of what are called oracle cells that form into different body types based on their single core. The only way to effectively kill an origami is to weaken it and extract that core. The problem is these things are virtually indestructible, and the only way to even leave a scratch on an origami is by using weapons made with oracle cells themselves. And of course, the only way to get better weapons is to challenge and extract better loot from tougher threats. So at first glance, this is exactly like Monster Hunter, but with a little bit more flavor. You even challenge progressively tougher missions in higher ranks after completing story missions, even though these seem to scale to each level that you fight in, as opposed to Monster Hunter's only low rank, high rank, and G rank tiers. I'm gonna stop you right there, because there's so much more to the gameplay here. We didn't even mention that on top of having several melee weapon classes to master, each one can seamlessly morph into one of several firearm weapon classes at the press of a button during combat. I love that I have the versatility of both a melee and a firearm weapon of choice at all times. Oh yeah, and your weapon can morph into one of several shield classes on top of all that. All these combinations add a ridiculous amount of customization to the combat. My favorite core feature of this gameplay is how you need to attack origami with melee attacks in order to stock up on oracle cells, which you can then convert into various bullets for your gun. It's a perfect give and take gameplay loop for combat that also makes perfect sense with this lore. There's also different predator styles and devours where your living weapon literally morphs into a giant mouth and takes a huge bite out of the enemy, not only giving you oracle cells, but also pushing you into what's called burst mode, where you kind of glow and stuff. I have put well over 60 hours into this game and I legitimately have no idea what burst mode really is. I only found out how shields affect your defense after about 15 hours. It took me well over half the game to realize that I was supposed to use a devour attack on downed enemies in order to extract loot from them. And only at the second to last boss did I realize that your equipment all has elemental strengths and weaknesses. It's safe to say that there is a tremendous amount of content to dig into here. But fortunately, this game isn't overly punishing and demanding that you master all of it in order to progress. Except for Blitz Hannibal, he can go die. Oh yeah, and playing single player isn't really a problem, as you can choose to bring along AI teammates from the game's large cast of NPCs. These characters all level up with their own new skills you can unlock and assign to them, making them much more versatile in combat to fit your playstyle. It's a good idea to try and keep them all well prepared, as the story sometimes demands you challenge huge threats with predetermined teams you may or may not have even been using. Then there's like 1,000 little things that make this feel so much better than Monster Hunter, like readable damage values, no loading zones in combat, collective party endurance levels instead of counting feints, and the ability to read all quest rewards, their probabilities, and how to acquire them right from the quest window. Hey, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I'm bothered that when hitting weak spots, you deal upwards of 10 to 15 times the damage dealt to an armored spot in an origami. That is ludicrous damage. On top of that, these creatures move pretty darn quickly and can dish out some insane punishment if you're not well prepared, leading to some underwhelmingly quick but devastating battles. But there's more than enough enemy variety and quest types that you'll always have something to do. Even with its quirks, it's still really fun. Not so much when your entire party won't stop chattering short, corny, and stereotypical anime one-liners during combat, sometimes cutting themselves off to say the exact same lines again. Now you can turn off some of these in settings, but not all of them.
Now I'll show you my real strength!
Cut you down!
Now I'll show you my real strength!
No, we don't mess with
Power
power.
is coursing through me!
Yes,
it's true power!
Cut you
Power
down!
coursing
No, we
through
don't
me!
mess with
Now I'll show you my real strength!
Cut
Power
you down!
coursing
Now I'll
through
show
me!
you my
real strength!
Cut you down! No, we don't mess
Now
with
Cut you down!
Anime. Moving on. Wait up. What about the character and creature designs? I really like the wide variety of origami classes and how their unique aesthetics all blend over into their craftable weapons. Some of those characters seemed a little outlandish, with absurdly dysfunctional clothing to borderline comical degrees of fan service. Sakuya is pretty much wearing a black napkin as a shirt. Give it a break, very few characters are actually that bad. Anyhow, it's a good time to talk about the fact that this game, God Eater Resurrection, is a fully remastered PSP port with extra story and mission content compared to the original 2010 title God Eater Burst, which itself is a remastered version with expanded story and missions from the base game God Eater. So this decade-old PSP game was ported up to be playable on modern Steam and PS4. Considering what an undertaking that is, the game turned out alright. Alright? This game looks pretty darn good considering what it is. The awkward attack and flinching animations would beg to differ. Plus, the game still has that weird 3D anime look that never really looks good no matter how polished the game gets. My character wore a massive cartoon frog head with Santa Claus's coat and a pair of pink oversized plushy teddy bear legs, so I guess I didn't really notice. I am tempted to say that the story is the best part of this game. Wow, that's good! Monster Hunter never really has a good story, so that's great to see here. I never said it was great. We don't really want to spoil the story here, as there's actually several really cool character arcs and plot twists to be discovered. It's like watching an anime that you can play. I also watched the actual God Eater anime, by the way, just for comparison to the game. How'd that go? Well, it's only got one season so far and only covers up to the story till about half of the first arc of 3, making it approximately 1/6 of the entire first game. So my biggest complaint was that there just wasn't more of it. The game itself does a great job of providing fully fleshed out characterization and atmosphere to the scenes. Alyssa learns to conquer her repressed PTSD. Soma struggles with accepting his unnatural Oracle Cell-infused birth. Shio is actually an origami, yearning to know what it's like to live as a human. And Johannes is challenged with moral dilemmas, deciding the fate of the entire planet. There's a lot to unpack. But like a typical anime, it has its handful of stereotypically one-noted characters. Ironically, the actual anime fleshed out the cast in a big way, especially with your near-silent protagonist. The anime paid far more attention to character development and world building than the game did, which I guess was to be expected. I mean, we're playing a game where humanity is nearly extinct, living in a wasteland, fighting off the ever-growing monstrous forces threatening to exterminate the last bits of life on the planet. That alone is interesting enough to want to learn more about it all. But the game itself hardly develops in world building outside of Fenrir, which is your base of operations, opting for implying what happened to the world through the atmosphere. The anime, however, does a spectacular job of remedying this. I would highly recommend giving it a watch. And don't worry about watching it before you play it or spoiling anything, considering how little it actually covers. Plus, the anime changes some big plot points from the source material in order to keep gamers in the know on their toes. You know, in the end, I would still say that this game is worth playing due to its substantial story alone. What the game puts forward is enjoyable enough of a ride to justify playing until the end. Or rather, all three of them. Wait, what? Yeah, so God Eater has an ending, and then God Eater Burst expands on that story and continues it until it ends, and finally God Eater Resurrection carries this until the third end for the final climax. Think of it like how Monster Hunter released a high rank or a G rank expansion to their base games. The real question is, was this story better than what the recent Monster Hunter game in 2015 had to offer? Yeah, that would be an emphatic yes! The music is incredible, but this music is terrible! Okay, so like, half of it is incredible, but this half is still terrible. I'm getting some serious Nier Automata vibes from this too, which is so not a good thing. But the intro theme cinematic is freaking outstanding! I'll give you that. But outside of story cutscenes where you actually want to hear the characters' voices, most players will probably play the game on mute, listening to Spotify or something instead. But you can even select what music you want the game to play during each mission. And it's not even buried in the menus. It's right there on the mission select screen alongside the character voice options. But I still can't mute or change the obnoxious hub areas theme. Is there any pleasing you? Probably not. I intentionally played the original God Eater before moving on to the sequels to get a fair view of the series. And now I can say with confidence that it is a worthy Monster Hunter alternative. Hey Capcom, I found proof that you can tell a good story in Monster Hunter. Too bad Bandai Namco beat you to the punch with it. A decade ago. Few games can equally grab me with their gameplay and story in a way that keep me engaged like this one did. At the very least, the story is a bonus incentive to keep on doing what you were gonna do anyway. Beat the crap out of a bunch of monsters. I know you're asking for a friend and all, but yes, there is boob jiggle physics. The positive gamer in me was left impressed with God Eater Resurrection, giving it a well-earned 8 out of 10. The gameplay is fun and creatively unique. The story and characters are deep and interesting, and the overall experience and gameplay loop was fulfilling and an overall great time. And considering how you can get the game for free on Steam when you buy God Eater 2, I'm willing to bump this up to a 9 out of 10 for sheer value alone. Don't miss out on this title if you are a fan of the genre. The critical gamer in me was surprised with God Eater Resurrection, but still finds reason to give it a decent 6 out of 10. The game can be cryptic at times, and some gameplay mechanics still confuse me to this day, but they weren't bad enough to break the experience for me. Combat banter and some music tracks got on my nerves, but didn't bring down the whole package. Though I have some gripes with it, the one thing this game doesn't deserve is to be forgotten. So, did you finally come up with a new genre for this game? I think so. It's time we ditch all these game-like genres and start fresh. God Eater and others like it henceforth should be referred to as Hunter Looters. So with that out of the way, what do you have planned for next week, Bomb? I don't know, what about a roguelike? Oh, come on! So, what did you think? Tell us how your positive and critical sides rate God Eater Resurrection in the comments below. But if you can't separate a game from similar franchises in order to hold it up on its own merits, then you're just playing with yourself. Do you have an idea for a new episode of Playing With Myself? Join the discussion on Discord using the new Patreon perks to nominate and vote for future episodes. The Patreon members get first picks, so check out the links in the description for more information. And as always, thank you to our amazing Patreon members, Tommy Thomas, Cameron, Arrow, Kai, Ben, Rowan, Erica, Sid, and Denny. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like the videos and subscribe for more. We will see you guys in the next video. Bye!